Welcome to the Fantasy Football GOAT Strategies. This is your host, Dub FFG. Week 1 of the Fantasy Football Playoffs 2021. Week 15 in totality. How'd you do? Did you make the playoffs? Are you in? Are you in it to win it? Or did you make the consolation bracket? So if that's the case, we'll see you next year. But all in all, fantasy football is good fun. Whether you wage anything or not, fantasy football is definitely a good breather from the norm. But again, thank you all that have tuned in all season, all long. We're now down to the last few weeks of the fantasy football season and the first week of the playoffs. Again, week 15 in totality. So let's get to it. Week 15, playoff week of week 1. Well, there are certain players that should increase your chances of winning your fantasy football league championship. I've identified a few of those. First, I would definitely say Tom Brady. Tom Brady currently is the fantasy football leader in ESPN, particularly in PPR. So how much more do you need to be said? Just the name itself, Tom Brady. He's definitely gonna, if you have him on your team, you should definitely be at the front or close to it. And you definitely have increased your chances of winning your fantasy football league. Next up, the defenses. Dallas Cowboys defense and the New England Patriots. Either of those two, I think, going down the stretch are going to be very valuable to you winning your championship. So if you have those, that should definitely increase your chances. It'll definitely give you an advantage, particularly Dallas in the next couple of weeks. I think they have the Giants, the Redskins the first couple of weeks, then the Arizona Cardinals. Patriots, maybe a little bit tougher route going into the next couple of weeks because they have Indiana, they have the Colts, and they have the Bills. And after that, they have Jacksonville. So you may be, if you have both of those teams on your squad, you should maybe interchange those later in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But they should definitely increase you to win your championships because they get their turnovers. They're getting turnovers now. They're getting sacks. That increases your score from a defensive perspective. So get those guys. Well, you should already have those guys. I doubt if they're available. And you definitely trade deadlines are definitely going by. So if you have them, that increases your chances. Next up, Micah Parsons. And for teams that or leagues that play defense like the ones that I play in, I love it because it helps you balance it out. You're not just offensive loaded in a defense and a kicker. No, you have individual defensive players as well as flex players on defense. Micah Parsons is excellent. In the past few weeks, he's continued to grow beyond imagination for a rookie. We haven't seen something like this from a rookie probably since, and I dare say it, Derek Thomas or Lawrence Taylor as a rookie. So this guy, in particular in ESPN, he's listed as either a linebacker or you can have him as a defensive lineman. I have him in one league and I have him listed as my defensive lineman, which gives me an extra added advantage compared to other D linemen because they're not going to score nowhere near what Micah Parsons scores on defense. So if you have him, you have a big advantage. Next to Cooper Kupp, Dalvin Cook. Going down the stretch, Cooper Kupp, and then Dalvin Cook definitely give you advantage from the scoring perspective. Dalvin Cook looked hungry last week. He's ready to get back into the fold. He's running like a madman. So if you have him, you definitely have an advantage. So Tom Brady, Dallas defense, Patriots defense, Micah Parsons, Cooper Kupp, Dalvin Cook. If you have those, big advantage, but they're not end-all be-alls. You need to balance it out. Key strategy. As I mentioned, balanced attack, which means every position counts in the playoffs. I know you may say, well, we already know that. Yeah, you do, but in action, sometimes you don't. You may know it in theory and in thought that every position counts. But a lot of times I see teams that are offense heavy, where in leagues that I play in, where we have individual defensive players, you need to balance that out. So your linebackers, your cornerbacks, the defensive players, defensive backs, your D linemen, your kickers, your flex defensive players, they all need to have strong outings. So to increase that, pay attention to the scoring. Pay attention to the rhythm or the pattern that they're currently in. Are they currently riding a wave of, again, using someone like a Trayvon Diggs early in the season? He was riding a wave of he had an interception in almost every game. In some games, he had multiple interceptions, but he's slowing down. So, is there someone else out there in defense that may be in your league that are putting up similar numbers to that? Maybe not without the interceptions, but in tackles or pass breakups, something of that nature. Sacks. Again, every position counts. Balance it out. Have a strong offense, a strong defense. Kicker, defensive players. You don't just want to be heavy on offense and weak on defense, because you may end up losing. And again, I know you're saying, we know this, I know this already. You do in theory, you do in actions, but a lot of times, you do in theory, you do in thought, but a lot of times I see people not know it in action because they fall in love with the offense and pay little attention to the defense. Balanced attack. Win your league. Next, there is no tomorrow. These are the playoffs, so pay close attention to detail, but don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. I see overthinking that it's more likely to occur when you're in a league that's offense heavy and the only defense you have is a defensive team and a kicker. So that's why I see a lot of overthinking may happen, or increase the possibility of overthinking. But again, whatever league you're in, pay close attention to detail. One particular detail that has affected the league this year and last year is, of course, virus. So guys are in safety protocols now. This week we've seen an increased number of that for this year alone. So that means you gotta pay attention to your team and your players all the way up until kickoff. And now we're getting into the weeks where we have Saturday games. So they have Thursday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday night. So you have to pay attention. If you don't, that one time that you don't pay attention to your team on that Saturday night could cost you. It gets a little brutal because you fought all year long to get here to this point, to be in the playoffs, go for the championship, and you lose focus. Pay attention. The next 3 weeks, you got to pay attention to the league. You got to pay attention to your players. You got to pay attention to the waiver wire. You got to pay attention to the injury report, to the protocol report. There is no tomorrow. Fantasy Football GOAT strategies. Will you win? Let's see. And in closing, your key players. I've listed 6 of them that should increase your chances to win your championship. But you may not have any of those 6, but you have some that are comparable to them. Hopefully they get you your championship. Again, no tomorrow. Pay attention to detail. This is when you become the lion in the den. This is when you become the champion. Because prior to, you were qualified. Now you're here. You're in the playoffs. It's time to get it. It's time to buckle down. Get focused. This is the time. Let's get to it.